day of March. Tomorrow is April 1st. And before we start our recap with PTSD and beyond, the recap of yesterday's global Twitter chat, I want to encourage people to be mindful of what tomorrow is. So usually on April 1st, we play jokes on one another. And sometimes the jokes are really super convincing. And I'd like people to be a little bit mindful about where we're at right now in the world and what kinds of things to joke about that are appropriate. So I'd encourage people to not joke about the coronavirus, to not joke about ventilator status, to not joke about number of deaths. Those are realities that we face every day, and for some of us face multiple times a day. If we want to find something to be humorous, again, and play a practical joke, let's just be a little bit mindful about where we're at in the world. All right, I think that message is really clear. Let's move on now to the recap of PTSD and beyond. Yesterday's global chat, we talked about mindfulness and what mindfulness meant. The discussion was really super rich, and people had all different kinds of examples to share about what mindfulness practice means, how they do it, challenges, and ways that we can do things differently. As a matter of fact, let's go back and look at some of the comments from people about what mindfulness is. And so when we were having the discussion, one of the key things that's a takeaway is that mindfulness means awareness. It means awareness where we're at in a particular moment. So like right now, being mindful that we're here together, being mindful about the words that are being said, being mindful about the way that the communication is being shared, and being mindful of this moment and then moving on to the next moment. One of the things that happens when we are mindful is that we move from moment to moment to moment to moment, and we're aware that we are moving and talking, and that we're aware in our mind that minutes are passing. It's not that we're counting minutes, but mindfulness means awareness. Now, how does mindfulness support our mental health? Well, there's many different ways that mindfulness supports our mental health. One is that mindfulness can help us move from fight, flight, as well as freeze. For example, the In-Between Queen shares mindfulness supports mental health by physiologically altering neural pathways in the brain that are used to be unhelpful with behavior and thoughts like flashbacks, binging episodes. She brings up a really good point because the word binge has a social meaning that was linked to eating disorders. And so now if you've noticed, people will say, ooh, I'm gonna, binge on whether it's, Amazon, Prime or, iTunes or iMovies or Netflix. And one of the things I'd like people to be mindful on is the words and the choice of words that we choose to use. I like to say movie marathon instead of binge, because again, binge I know links to an eating disorder. And there are people that suffer from this. So why would we say, binge watching? Why not say something that's more positive, like movie marathon or watching marathon? Tim Grucius, and I know he's going to watch this and say, you know what, Deb, every time you say my last name, you come up with really interesting ways to say my last name. But Tim says that mindfulness affords us the opportunity to be present with ourselves. Be present with ourselves. And another gal, Glory, also said that it allows me to just be me. It reminds me that I am enough just as I am. So mindfulness is a relationship that we have with ourselves as well as other people. I think one of the myths that people think about, and we discussed myths, and I want to talk about and move to myths right now, is that when people think about mindfulness, they think that you're sitting on this cushion and that, your legs are crossed and you're doing this practice. That's not what mindfulness is. See, sometimes also people believe that mindfulness and meditation are one of the same. That's actually a myth. Meditation is a form of mindfulness. It's a way of developing mindfulness. There's a difference. So mindfulness is awareness, And we can develop the skill of awareness through practice. And practice means repeatedly using something over and over again, just like any other skill. If we want to learn to be a good cook, we have to practice cooking. If we want to be an efficient swimmer, we have to practice swimming. If we want to run a marathon, we have to practice running. We have to go out and run. We have to go out and cook. And developing the skill of awareness, of mindfulness, is the same thing. You have to find different techniques and ask other people, what mindfulness practice do you have? What have you tried? What have you used? In our chat, we talked about mindful eating. We talked about mindful cooking. There's many different forms of mindfulness. And all of these forms support our mental health as well as our physical well-being, our emotional states, and our energy. So mindfulness can be any undivided attention activity such as exercise, eating, reading, walking, gardening, and that's again from Tim. Those are some great examples. And coloring, journaling, there's all different kinds of things that in ways to practice mindfulness. You can even just be sitting, looking at nature, gardening. It's not so much about the activity. It's about paying attention to where you are at, what you're doing, what your mindset's like, what your emotions are like, how your physical body's responding, all of those things. And eventually when you develop the skill, and along the way of developing the skill, you'll find that you're doing things naturally, that it just happens. It's not forced. It's not, you got to schedule it. It just naturally happens. So when something naturally happens, we find ourselves then moving from reaction to response. And what happens when we move from reaction to response is we lower our stress. We can reduce any sort of physical ailment. We can reduce anxiety, and we can increase our overall sense of well-being, overall sense of joy, and our overall sense of satisfaction with life. And believe me, right now, especially right now, we need that kind of skill development. Now, with post-traumatic stress, where mindfulness becomes helpful is it's helpful with insomnia, it's helpful with flashbacks, and it's helpful with reducing those stress and trigger moments. So like what happens typically is that somebody is unaware of their triggers. They practice mindfulness. They develop a little bit of a skill, and on their way to further developing that skill, they start having these aha moments of, yeah, that's what triggers me. Or, yeah, that's a trigger. And then it becomes the awareness of, what am I going to do about it? How can I use mindfulness to help me not be hooked? How can I move again from the, I wasn't aware of my trigger, now I'm aware of my trigger, to I want to help myself not get triggered or be less triggered, and then move from less trigger to, ooh, I actually had a moment of, I wasn't triggered at all, to, you know what, now I have a few things that still trigger me, to those other things don't trigger me, to where can we get to a point of life where maybe we don't have any triggers anymore. They're just a memory. So we have the memory of how things used to be, but we don't have the reaction of what they were. I'm not there myself yet. Where I'm at with PTSD is there's a lot that doesn't trigger me anymore, but there's still a few things that do. Now, I will say that there was a situation today that I could have easily, I say easily, gotten triggered. But I took a moment before taking that call, and literally just a moment, and I said, okay, practice. And I know my 3 things that I do, and sometimes I don't have to use them. And sometimes I do. And today I did, and I did not get triggered, And I kept moving through my day, and it allowed me to stay in control of me and not the trigger to control me. So everybody makes progress, and we all make progress at different speeds. It's not that you go from here and you catapult over there. I wish that it was. I wish it was that simple. We talked about this last night too in the PTSD and Beyond global Twitter chat, which is that the techniques are easy to do, but man, they're not easy to make into a skill. And there's many different reasons. Some of the key reasons why is that some techniques work for some people and some techniques don't. I mean, that's just the, honest, direct truth. And the other thing that's difficult is that a technique might work for me today, but it might not work for me tomorrow or in 2 months. Or a technique might not work today, but when I try it again later, it might work. See, trauma and stress is individualized, as well as we learn things from the collective group. So we learn things from like the outliers, right? As well as the little clusters. And how this relates to mindfulness is that what I like about mindfulness, and we talked about this also in the PTSD and Beyond chat, is that one of the biggest benefits of mindfulness is that anybody can do it, and it's portable. You can take it wherever you go, on an airplane, in the car, with your kids, holiday gatherings. Can't wait for those to happen again when we could all do those things. It's portable. And another benefit of mindfulness is that, like I said, it's easy to do, but not easy to learn. So once a person makes a commitment and practices mindfulness, meaning they use it every day and they find the things that work for them, as well as keeping on the back shelves maybe some things that haven't worked that they want to try later. And you keep doing it, and you keep doing it, and you keep doing it, and you keep doing it until you develop a skill, and then that skill becomes a habit. And then the habit becomes part of you. It's like drinking, swallowing, breathing, blinking. You're not telling yourself you need to blink. You just do it. And some things, with mindfulness, if you develop the skill, you just do it. You don't even think about it. Or you might have a pregnant pause moment and say, okay, yep, I know my 3 go-tos. And I always recommend people to have 3 go-tos of things that work for them. Those are 3 things that you can help yourself. And you can use mindfulness then. And you develop your own skills. All right, so let's take a look at some of the other comments that people left for we can share this information with people out on our feed today. We talked about the benefits of mindfulness and how it helps our mental health, some myths, some definitions of what mindfulness is. And so, again, when we look at the language that we use to describe mindfulness, it's important that we talk about something else too, which this comes up a lot, which is, where did it come from? And who created it? See, one of my concerns is that, mindfulness is being controlled by labeling it with certifications in therapy type people who are licensed clinical therapists. And while I understand the need for making sure there's a consistency and a depth and rigor of things to give it validity, what I don't like is that, now all of a sudden, if you want to practice mindfulness in a hospital, you've got to be a nurse or you need to be a licensed something or other. Because the person who actually brought mindfulness to the United States to make it mainstream is not an MD or an EDD or a PhD. Actually, no, that's not true. Does he have a PhD? I shouldn't say that. I'm not sure if he's got a PhD. I have to look that up. Let me look that up real quick. He's not an MD, that I know for sure. And so what I don't understand is why now there's this need for making it as such. Let me see here. Real quick. Let's see. Yes, he has a PhD, but he's not an MD. And why I say that is because practice. Not that it seems like, but the medical community is trying to make it into a controlled, licensed practice, which is absolutely absurd. On the other hand, I would recommend, and I highly recommend people to make sure if you're taking a mindfulness workshop, a mindfulness class, a program, that a person's been trained, that they just didn't pick up a book and say, oh, I think I can do this too. You really want to make sure that a person has some sort of credential, whether it's they've been doing this for years themselves, they figured some things out, and that's the beauty of pure lead stuff. And that's what PTSD and Beyond is, as well as having the education and the science behind it. Which is the added value of, get both the best worlds. All right, so what else do we have here from our chat that is really important for people to know? What are ways that you think you can practice mindfulness? One of the ways that I practice mindfulness is I force myself to slow down. See, if a person has anxiety, at least in the way that I use mindfulness, it helps me slow down. Because an anxious mind, it's impossible to make a logical decision with an anxious mind or an angry mind. So like, for example, the phrase, don't send out the email when you're angry. Don't send out the email when you're anxious either. Because you'll say things and your mindset isn't flowing and moving in the logical frame set. Because we're in the fight, flight, freeze. Our body's reacting to something. So mindfulness helps me slow down. And what it also does for me is it helps slow down my nervous system. Hence anxiety, right? I'm not nervous. I'm able to slow it down and to think and to move slower. And that movement and motion of moving slowly helps calm my brain. It also helps calm my thinking, and I don't start overthinking and becoming hypervigilant on situations. Now, at the same token, mindfulness can help people with sadness and depression. And what I have found is that there's a movement, a physical action movement with mindfulness and certain mindful techniques that people can use that help people that with sadness and depression to actually take steps of movement. Because with a depressed mind, as difficult as it is, movement is the key. So if you think of a couple trains of thought, with mindfulness, look for a technique that instills movement for sadness. That's why they say, just try to get off that couch. Try to put down the remote. Just try to have some sort of movement. And with anxiety, it's the opposite. We need to slow it down, to be aware of our bodies, to be aware of all of the things within ourselves to help us slow it down and reduce the anxiety and the nervousness. So one of the last questions that we had on our chat was, what can I do this week to be mindful? This week I will be mindful in my blank. And some suggestions are to purchase the groceries that you need, to check in on neighbors, to listen to what people are saying, as well as to hear what they're not saying. So when someone says, for example, I'm fine, are they really fine? What else are they saying? See, when we use mindfulness, we're able to look at, again, as I mentioned, through the 5 pillars of stress, our mindset, and someone else's, emotions, physical body. What's your physical body posture telling you? What's your body posture saying about you? Your energy. So there's my mindset, my emotions, my physical body, my energy. What are all of those things saying? When we mindfully look at all of that, remember, because mindfulness means awareness, it helps to create a larger picture of what's happening with ourselves as well as the people around us. Right now, I typed in on Twitter, it was something like, don't want this life anymore, just in the search bar. And it was really saddening to see how many people are actually writing this. I don't want this life anymore. What neighbor, friend, stranger, person can we mindfully be in tune to who's feeling like that, who's thinking like that? And reach out and let them know you're not alone. We are stronger together. So Glory says, this week I'll use mindfulness and self-care by bringing myself back to the moment whenever I feel anxious or fear-driven, and I will focus on my here and now. What's important about focusing on the here and now using mindfulness is that when I focus on the here and now, it means all the external stuff is just around me and it has no effect on me. Because if I'm focused right here and right now, it's like a horse with blinders on it. I don't see anything else. Or I might know that it's there and it has no effect. Tim says, I'll use mindfulness as self-care by breathing and working through my control issues. To be present and do not worry about the future because this will pass and I'll become more and more resilient as a result. So yes, mindfulness can help also to develop resiliency. Now, resiliency doesn't mean I blow it off. It's not resilient. Resilient doesn't mean I blow it off. Resiliency is I'm aware of everything that's going on and I'm still okay. I'm able to bounce back from the stress and I'm still okay. That's what resiliency is about. Resiliency is about the ability to bounce back and to say, you know what? I'm completely aware of everything that's going on in my situation. I'm completely aware of everything that's going on in the world, and I am still okay. All right, let's see what else we have here, guys. So Sonia says, here's some awesome tips on ways to use mindfulness for self-care. Doing relaxing activities. Limiting her watching of TV news. Absolutely. Because especially right now, folks, we need to remember that news wants to sell us. And I say that because their primary objective is to make sure that we watch. I can remember back when I was a kid that the news was only on at like 6 and like 10 o'clock. And now we have news on all the time. But how does that information help us? Or does it cause more triggering situations? So be mindful of what you're watching and be mindful of where you're watching it and how much. It's like with anything. Moderation is a good thing. But if you do something or overeat over anything, that's never a good thing. It never works out to be a healthy situation for us. And then also Sonia says, and increase watching my comedy movies and occasional cartoons. What I like about this is a fun factoid is that it's nearly impossible for the brain to be in a fight, flight, freeze state when you're laughing or when you're, enjoying something that makes you smile. You can't smile and frown at the same time. It's impossible to do so. So I encourage you guys to take Sonia's advice and her practical sharing here to increase watching comedy movies and the occasional cartoon. So let's see what else are some things that we talked about in I think one of the things that is very true is right now that trying to control the unknown. So Seabrook says, trying to control the unknown is a great source of stress and anxiety. And we vow to be mindful and focus on the things we can change rather than things that we cannot. So that in itself, that phrase, when we focus and we're mindful on the things that we can control, like I can control the things that I eat, but I can't control actually what I get from my Amazon order. Even though it's in my cart, it doesn't mean it's going to come. So I'm mindful about this and I plan my meals accordingly. Whatever I get, I get. And believe me, there's been some funny things that we've gotten as substitutes that I've actually shook my head and said, who thought of that? Oh my gosh. Who thought of that? So yeah, the other thing too is about when we think about our feelings, some people say, just stay with our feelings. And with mindfulness, and you practice mindfulness with yourself, meaning you're using mindfulness, and a way that we can use mindfulness is I'm aware of my feelings. I'm aware of my emotions. I'm aware of my mindset. And I stay with it. And sometimes I process it, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I say, I know that you're there, and it's okay, and this is going to move along. Because what I have found is that while people might want to stay in anger, for example, and they want to be angry all the time, eventually that anger is going to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. And when we're mindful and we use a mindfulness technique, we can say to ourselves, I'm feeling this way now, and it's going to pass. I feel this way a little bit still, and that's okay, because I'm noticing that it's moving. I'm noticing that I'm in control of me and I'm changing. We don't have to suppress our emotions. We can be mindful and express our emotions. Last week we talked about journaling and bullet journaling, and those are some really great types of techniques. So while we're talking about techniques, I'd like to share with everybody, we've got a new cool schedule with PTSD and Beyond. And actually it's my schedule. So there's a few things that I do, like on Saturday, we do Shoot the Shit. On Monday, we do PTSD and Beyond the chat. On Tuesday, we do the PTSD and Beyond chat recap. On Wednesday, we cook. I like to cook. It's one of the things that helps me with my stress. Makes me happy, actually. When I'm in the kitchen cooking, I'm in my zone. And Friday, what are we doing on Friday? Do you know what we're doing on Friday? I'm asking my wonderful partner here, my daughter. What are we doing on Friday? So Saturday, we do Shoot the Shit.
On Friday, it is the podcast.
Oh, that's right. Friday, we release the podcast. And then on Thursday, we do a mindfulness exercise. So Monday, we've got PTSD and Beyond Twitter chat. Tuesday, we got the recap like today. Wednesday, we're cooking together. Thursday, we're doing a mindfulness exercise every week. And Friday's the podcast. And Saturday, we do Shoot the Shit. So Saturday, we get together and we just have a cup of coffee or tea or whatever, and we see how everybody's doing. It's like a community get together all around the world. And I encourage you guys to continue to subscribe on my YouTube page because I post other things there than I do live on the Twitch stream. Follow me on Twitch. And let's get together tomorrow and do some cooking. Thursday, we are doing a vision board mindfulness exercise. So all that you need on Thursday is like a stack of magazines, some quotes, a piece of paper, or a flip chart board, a poster board, whatever you've got in the house, some crayons, markers, anything you want to use to write, maybe a picture of yourself, and we're going to do a vision board this Thursday. All right, you guys, it's Dr. Deb with PTSD and Beyond. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.